Copy link. Nej. Det er du. Den der. Jeg er helt 100 på, at jeg ikke har skrevet noget. Ja, lige præcis. Så kom noget, den skulle gerne komme noget. Okay, det er fint nok. Det er godt nok. Og så skal jeg vel bare...
Du står herovre fra hele tiden. Så du sådan... Kan gøre noget, når...
Hvordan bevæger musen?
Stop nemlig. Det er ligesom...
We're good. Hvordan er video så okay?
Kan vi se skærmen på jeres? Nu er vi...
Og hvilken vej vender skærmen? Det går ud.
Smukt.
Det var den her, der
ja. Så det er mit arbejde.
Det er virkelig dejligt.
Jeg sidder og klipper klister sammen. Ja, det bliver lidt mit arbejde sidste gang, jeg sidder og klipper klister manuelt sammen. Så er vi jo
Som flyvende.
Fedt. Go team.
Ja, tak.
Jeg kalder ind.
Ja.
Ja, desværre.
Ja.
Hello, everyone. If I can have, sorry about that. If I can have your attention, please. If I can have your attention, please. We are about to begin. We need to make a small announcement before we start. Hello. Thank you. So we are about to start. Before we go into the auditorium, it's very important to note we are not allowed to bring any drinks or food inside except for water. So if you are drinking something, then please, you have a couple of minutes, finish up. Yeah, and you can and then come inside and join us. Thank you very much. Stående hund. Det er Andreas' job, han er host. Så er jeg så fræk, at...
Hvad gjorde den her?
Det var mig.
Okay.
Ui. Kom så. Jeg finder ud af, at jeg gør det næste gang, og det var så meget nemmere. Så...
Du var præsenteret for en mobil.
Ja, altså. Så har jeg min klikker, og jeg har det hele, og noter og fuld pakke.
Nu når det er video.
Ja. Er der flere derude? Right, I think we'll slowly get started. Apologies for the delay. We had some technical issues. How many engineers does it take to make a PowerPoint? That's here for those who need it. Have the close the door. Much. So, welcome to Pydata Copenhagen. I actually tried to count. I think we're 30. Once a month plus some Corona breaks. So it's great to see that we still have all these people coming and willing to show up every month. So that's great. So what I always like to do is just have a quick check. Who's been here before? And who's been here for the first time? Okay. So usually we get about 50-50. So slightly different this time. But it's good to see we always get some new. That's what we're trying to achieve. So for those of you who don't know, Pydata is run by NumFocus. NumFocus is a nonprofit organization that is responsible for a lot of the programs that you today. Pandas, Matplotlib, Scikit-learn, and the list goes on. They actually started their annual fundraiser yesterday. So if you, as me, owe your current livelihood the work that NumFocus does, then please do consider giving. They are completely run and shared. And they also run our meetup. And we are a chapter on the Pydata organization. Also means that we follow their Pydata code of conduct. So it's on the screen. There's a link, but the very short version is that are a professional environment, kind to each other, not tolerate. If you are ever in a position where you feel that such language conduct, please come find myself, and we. So far, we haven't had to use any of them, so please don't. Some practicals. Yeah, we have the bathroom on the corner. We have one other rule apart from the code of conduct, and that is the Pacman rule. And those of you who've been here before know exactly what I'm talking about. But we are here to meet and network and chat about all the. That's hard to do if you're all huddled up. It means that no one can. So if you're standing in a circle, which is a very natural behavior for us herd animals, then please remember to open up a slot so that someone else can join your conversation. And then if someone does join, make sure to open it again. So that's the Pacman rule. So today we are, of course, sponsored and hosted by Brand Now Group. So if Andreas, if you'd like to come give the good people a few words about. You never gave me one because no. They keep on changing. So
I thought you had one job. Yeah.
17. It's on the outside.
Old company and merged. Yes. So yeah, it's just.
So, yeah, exactly. So, Brand has consistently hosted and sponsored Pydata Copenhagen from the very beginning, so we're very, very happy to. Thank you very, very much to you guys. This is our community announcement sections. This is where you can pitch, have a conference that's coming up. You have some announcements, Python, Pydata, job opening that you want to advertise. Then, as you please. Anyone else? Then I will pitch Pydata Global, started today. So if you have a few hours to kill, they're running all day long, all across all the different time zones. It's a global gathering of everyone working Python and pay as much as you can, or sponsored by company, then of course. It's all, again, a donation focus. That is how they also raise money for all. That's another way that you can. Yes, it's today, tomorrow, and the 3rd. They're also doing a bunch of sprints and stuff like that. So in case you just want to see the recordings, there's still some stuff that you can only do at the conference. If you're into pandas or matplotlib, I think as well. There's there. They're all doing sprints about contributing back to open source. Yeah. If you're free consulting, then yeah. Oh, sorry. Wrong way. Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely. So if you, I see the people trying. If this doesn't work, please do come find me. I will give you invites to Slack. We're also on LinkedIn, but yeah, we will try to find a better place to advertise our Slack. And of course, today's talk, we're going to have Thomas joining us, tell us all about storytelling with data. But before that, because I always forget it, we need you guys. So today we're fortunate enough to have Thomas here. He spent his time preparing this presentation for us. We want to hear from you guys. What are you passionate about? The product you guys work. Sometimes it feels like no one hearing about that. I absolutely promise you. If you need help spitballing, pitching story ideas, something like that, again, get in touch. So with no further ado, let's give the word over to Thomas. Big hand. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
I need that.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have a last-minute change of laptop, so bear with us with any. Oh, so one more thing I always forget. I will be taking pictures throughout the day. If you have any objection to being in those pictures, again, let me know. I'll make sure that you are excised. There, that should be everything.
Thank you. Just to start off, if I look weird when I'm presenting, it's because my Linux laptop didn't recognize the H. Show it. Fortunately, somebody had a Mac that's working, but the screen here is tilted. So it might be looking like this when I look at the presentation here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about storytelling with data. And just to lead off and about myself, also in the spirit of Unity. So I'm working now as a director of data IoT automotive company called Connected Cars. We also work as an external examiner, Jansson Dansk. We're kind of a great master thief IoT. And I've seen a lot of critical eye in that context, and some of the ideas to talk was formed doing that. Okay, what could I combine? Some private stuff just to kind of make conversation go easier if we have a beer afterwards. I like carbon steel, knife sharpening, wearing perfect espresso pucks, paintings, and washing. Kind of probably the more geeky side of me. So what I'm going to talk about today is, first of all, color scales, and something I have been very interested in for a long time, and there's a lot to be said about it, So I think maybe some of you probably already know and have the same opinion. This, and some of them it might be new. And I'm going to talk about tabular data and how to present the right way, how to communicate uncertainty. I have a take on how I think uncertainty should be presented, but as much as like outreach as data professionals, how should we present uncertainty data to the end? And I have a plot on scatter plots and dangers of using those. A little bit on time series data, finding anomalies, plans, right plot for the right people, good and bad examples of visual. And finally, I'm going to sum it up with a few key takeaways and some further reading. So yeah, just to start it off with a nice plot, that's 68 years collected cars, single day. Has no purpose other pretty. So the first off is color scale. So there's kind of 3 different types of color scale. There are sequential, diverging, qualitative, and all of them serve a purpose in different environments. That's kind of the first thing to take away. When to use the right one. Have the amount of water, you might have a sequential where the values get more and more dark or something like that. You have temperature data, it would be natural to have a diverging, some is hot, some is cold. And if you have qualitative color scales, you want to distinguish basically them as much as you can, kind of color blindness. That's another thing, kind of, I don't think it's necessarily talked enough about, but like almost 10% of all have color blindness. The red-green is quite concerning when some of the more popular color scales actually have red and green opposite sides, would be rendered almost. When then they're used to make plots that are used to show to decision makers, you have a lot of problems. Black and white friendly. It used to be photocopy friendly, but I don't think anybody photocopy. But I have a remarkable, and I was grading these remarkable and black and white. Now the color scales, if their luminosity, back to that, not linear, would have things that look dark that are low value, and some other things that look dark that are high value. It completely messes up your perception and the story that the plot tells. That's super well. Then there's a kind of a bad projector, online meetings, screen friendly. This is a fairly good projector, but there's bad projectors out there, low resolution or washed out colors. So if you have a yellow line on a white background, but it can basically kind of some of the things considering how the data should be presented is also influence the color scale chosen. And as I also said, color psychology is also something you should consider, because green is good and red is bad, at least how the graphical signs in Denmark work, and drive when it's, but that's not global. That's a cultural thing. It could be in other cultures that red is bad and red is good. And religions you don't use. It's kind of, it's more about like where I'm presenting, setting is that colors right now same way. Yeah, and one final thing, I've seen that several places that you have color scales and designers well-intended wanted to do, okay, let's do a color scale that is our company colors. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a color scale that are qualitative different, or maybe then you make something that are shades of the company color. Really hard to kind of beautiful for some things, but if you want to tell a story about data, you should pick the right color scale first, and then later, yeah. Okay, this is some of you probably already know this plots, but basically up here what we have is some of the classical color scales from Matplotlib, as in MATLAB, have these rainbow, and they have a lot of octaves to play on. Oh, there's so many colors. It could be distinguish them from each other. And I was in the oil industry for 10 years and get a lot, kind of its standard, but it has some problems. One of them, if you look at the plot below, is called the lightness velocity plot, and what you can see is it's not linear. The blue one are gonna try to do. Okay. So the blue one is very dark. Red one in the other one is also dark. Now if we plot that on a black and white markable, it kind of will both be dark. So interpreted something really low value or high value, however you interpret it. And also this mashup of the yellow and slightly red colors on top of the luminosity. So what has been done about that? Yeah, that was probably a while now, 5 years ago. They started to introduce deceptively sequential color maps, rolls up. But basically what it is kind of linear in luminosity. So each one of them, when plotted, know that like dark is like has a lower volume value. Printed it black and white, it interpreted the same way. Also, since it's a single hue, there's not a color like a color blindness color scale. This is kind of the modern world. You can say, oh yeah, but how big of a deal is this? Actually, oh no, wrong transition. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about. If you don't know it, it's just a great tool. I just advertised. Color Brew has also been around for a really long time, but it has, say, you have 4 data classes and you want to have qualitatively different colors. Enter the number, pick different options you want for the color scale, colorblind, safe, etc., and then picks on the color circle like the most distant colors from each other, the most different one. So this app here, 4 different classes, even though it's in the sea of purple, you still pick out the red, the blue very easily. So kind of you can play around and then you can put it in hex or RGB values. Just a great tool for playing around. You have sequential and diverging. Now, how bad can it be? It can be really bad. So this is an example from an article I have linked below. By the way, the whole presentation will be published, clickable. Well, basically, same plot shown in gray, jet, and then jet, but as by a colorblind person. What you can see, kind of the red represent colors, and the details you saw in jet is now gone. So kind of eye-opening to see how would that be achieved. And then finally, cleaner luminosity-based color scale called Viridis from the Matplotlib. Basically, what you see, yellow areas in the jet plot as more brighter, or higher value, even though it's in the mid of the color scale. Whereas if you look at the Viridis, gray one, have this, okay, no, actually the yellow ones at the end is more distinct one. Another example is from geophysics. I have a background as a physicist, natural interest in this, but the geophysical data presented again, jet on one hand side, which is very popular, and then in more optimized color scale. Top you can see, okay, here we use jet, and for some reason, because of the color scale, you have the kind of the yellow lines coming in. But in the other one, top line where you have a diverging color scales and kind of see transition 0 better. You have the temperature data where there's again this layer in the middle that is very distinct because velocity goes boom, goes down again. But in the color scale from Matplotlib, there, kind of more of a general, kind of changes how you perceive the data told by the story. Story told by. Okay. Next one I wanted to talk about is just because I've seen this in. I looked at somebody well-intended wanted to present like this is the data. I have I mapped them out. I have a lot of data. It was left aligned. I have varying numbers of decimals. Kind of just looking at what is the big number here. Couldn't tell because it's kind of your eyes are guided to the length of the number of digits. Kind of just a mess. So kind of the first cleanup someone would do is write a line and fix the number of decimals. Now just by gauging, squinting your eyes, you can lower in length, and that's all fine and dandy. But kind of, for some reason, not something that is being done very much in published papers either. Like why don't we just help a little bit more, color code the table if you must have a table, tons of data. Like now it's very, very easy to see that, okay, the 0.025 is low value. Like now we have a easily identifiable way of navigating it. Of course, I would argue always that I just not very simple plot, but just kind of do a visualization, kind of a way to explain this, have this many points. And now again, you could say, but does that really happen in the real life? Then I went to the archive, or exile, how to pronounce it, and found just papers that were published last 7 days. That was on the third one I looked at. There's this list of numbers given, and kind of surely somebody can go in, pick out the S name, and then look up the relevant numbers for all of us. Kind of, where's the high value? What am I looking at? So kind of, and what kind of annoys me is things like this. The low value has a high uncertainty. Low value has less digits. So kind of even this visual way of seeing the length of it just messes with, no, this is false value. Yeah. I agree. I mean, but the thing is and now I haven't read the whole paper, but it's kind of depends on what the story is told by data, but at least there's no, yes. No, the idea here is kind of, there's no guide, there's no help to the reader, and that's kind of what I want to point out in this column. I don't think so. Okay, mine is here, so it's not mine. Anyway, so kind of in this column of numbers, there's a list of numbers, and which one is the biggest one? Just helping the reader in some way, color coding or sorting or whatever it is, make it much better, and it just happens a lot. So here's a variant of data. It's did a long time ago in class analysis of speeds, something called an ATK, automatic traffic control, where you put up a camera and it kind of hands out tickets to drive too fast. We did an analysis of the stretch of road before it was installed, and afterward. Basically, it's just mean speed in the different section days, and like you have some kind of probably a speed limit around the 60. and sometimes it's over that. Now I have the same plot here after, and because I've color-coded it, the tabular data, you can now visually just flipping back and forth. You have this notion, oh yeah, afterwards it gets darker. What does darker mean? Or inner luminosity color scale and look, oh yeah, darker means lower. Basically what we can, just by flipping back and forth, there's this array of numbers. Works. People are driving slower, do the camera now recording. So yeah, and send that data in another way. The box and plot, you can after are the orange ones on the hours of the day, and the medians it's at the same or a little bit. It worked, but just to say that this helping the reader going through a tabular data set can be quite effective way of telling text data. So luckily for me, since we backed it up, not to do live coding, so I took some code. It's all available on Jansson where I kind of just looked in. It's fairly simple, loading up data set, tips, calculated a tip percent, all these bills, and then looked at that comparing to the time, dinner, lunch, and hit it off. There's descriptive statistics, and I kind of want to investigate whether or not tip percentage is larger at lunch compared to dinner time. This kind of analysis is something you would be setting fairly often. You would look at, okay, yeah, we look at the mean, say, yeah, bigger at lunchtime. Let's increase our sales at lunch because we earn more tips or what rationale is. And then for the more advanced people, you would look at the mean and say, a little bit different, or even maybe not. So the first thing you would probably see then somebody doing a plot like this. Now looking at the mean value plotted up as a bar plot, and we want to bigger than each other. Say, okay, lunchtime is this. Then somebody like us, a data professional, comes in and say, no. You need a swarm plot on top of a Boxen plot to really see the number of points and outliers, how do they influence the data, and where does the median values lie? That's center line box. Okay, and then we get feedback from the business owner and basically say, nonsense. So you come back and say, okay, make it easy. Make it Boxen plot. Not as busy. Build some lines you can follow, and kind of this doesn't work. There's violin plots as well, and they're beautiful, but kind of introduced into every business setting that you show them. Like this is how it should be interpreted. This is the quartiles, and you can't have a statistics lecture every time you show a result. So in the end, I can never get away with those, though I love them. So in the end, my kind of takeaway on this is I really think it's important to get the answer. And bar plots is very well used and well understood. So my suggestion, this is an open-ended question, I think, talk over beer. This is my take on how in both ourselves, as we now communicating uncertainty, but also please the business part or the commercial part of the organization with something they know. Basically a bar plot with a bootstrapped uncertainty confidence interval on top of it. And immediately the us now tell the story with this plot saying intervals overlap, you can confirm. Done. Okay, so that was the first take on the. Of course, what should have been done in the beginning was perhaps that we drove into actually looking at never fly setting show the distance. But what we actually look at when we plot the histogram is, okay, it's bimodal. Now we know that the descriptive statistics that we just looked at kind of not to be sure using debatable at least, in the descriptive value, comparing the two descriptives. Now enough. Then I just want to give a tool out, because a colleague of mine recommended this, just a quick exploration tool. I mean, I plot all my things into pandas, load the data up, but there's an interactive tool, that first analysis. Plenty out there, but detail is kind of a nice one. Basically, short detail, a lot of wrapper code, but data frame, put it in detail show, start up a web browser, or you can put a notebook, and then you shows an interactive tool. Then from there you can pick scribe, and then it makes histograms, or you can make scatter plots, you can make correlations. It's like everything is just in. So for that first analysis, that's what we professional bar plots. We have already seen bimodal plot and know how to act accordingly. So I think it's kind of a nice tool. Which leads me to the next one. Probably many of you know this from statistics, but in case you don't, I think it's a great thing to have in the back of the mind at this point where somebody asks you, why isn't descriptive? That will not. But rather the argument is kind of, why shouldn't I just show the bar plot? Okay, because there's Francis Ancombe in the 70s made this example. Here we have 4 scatter plots, go next slide, and they all have mean, variance, same correlation, same linear regression. But you can see the data widely different. So if we just present a mean and a variation, first order statistics would be wrong. Or at least not be wrong value. But if we're not having understood the data, just simple numbers. And a funny thing, like when I was looking at this, is that in 2016, somebody made this called the Datasaurus dozen. Quite fun. They made a Tyrannus Rex as a scatter plot, and then generate a model to kind of make other scatter points that would have exactly the same mean, standard deviation, and correlation. So just nice to keep in mind that when you ever see, surely this must be dinosaur. Wouldn't know until you plot. Just to keep that in mind when you get these questions. I haven't researched much into the Dinosaurus doesn't. Okay. That just makes it even better. Okay, this is another, like a pet peeve of mine, and that is especially in business. Imagine so. Highlighting the change in the plot and not the plots themselves. Because I see a lot of that when you make a screenshot from some other tool, put it in, and then you make another screen, not pixel perfect, kind of overlapping, dancing around, or you plot different things, the bars change. So keep your eyes on the left-hand top corner here. So the first one, I've changed the location of the plot ever so slightly, and the scale is also, to me, I mean, that the bars are also plotting around. What are you actually seeing? Scales are also, so everything is jumping. Eyes are drawn to whatever thing you pick. Not necessarily. Second plot, you have the color, the scale itself is changing depending on we're showing the kind of different values, so it jumps around. Again, you're not really sure what your scale is different. And only in the last one, plots are on top of each other, pixel perfect, and you have the same scale. Now we can look bigger, values are lower. Just a pet peeve. And you can say again, why does that matter in industry? Well, it does, especially seismic data. So on the left-hand side is seismic sections of sound waves through the Earth, and you have the layers of the Earth shown. And actually, it's all data set plotting seismic data. Open detail, quite cool. Downloaded the demo data set. This square around it, kind of interesting. So I did that, and I had two plots. I'll show you in a second. And this one is from the Wikipedia Society of one of the authorities in the field. This is from their wiki, where I kind of want to highlight some change. They had two pictures, but they were both screenshots. So when you looked at it, I want to highlight the difference. All I see is everything is jumping around, and I think the only thing that has changed is they added a line, but I'm not really sure. Everything is jumping, whereas the other hand, nothing is jumping but the seismic. And now I can see, okay, imagine you're sitting in a cube of data and you're moving through it. That's what I'm doing. And then 10 meters next. Now we're seeing specks of data flipping back and forth. But in the other one, we just change all. So if you want to highlight something and draw your audience eyes to, say, getting data. Look at this. It's called amplitude anomaly. Well related. Could be. If you look at that and look back and forth, you can see getting bigger one line. So that's the kind of thing you want your audience to be looking at. Definitely not the whole plot jumping around. Next thing, something I also saw in a lot of different variations, just scatter plots with tons of plots. I created a scatter plot as points. I've seen variations of that with tons of plots. The linear relationship, right? Underneath it, something hidden. So if we do another kind of plot that's more appropriate to do a KDE and a histogram sort of plot, top of it, you really see a hidden structure of data with another correlation negative in this data set and the dominant one. But you can't see it punched in 13,000 plots on top. So it's overplotting. Just something to keep in mind. Very different variations of point clouds and then a linear regression through kind of really as an audience, you sit back and say, could have drawn anything, and on top of it wouldn't have convinced. Oh, yep. And if you have that, but yeah, if you have that, then essentially you're kind of doing a 3D. Yeah, or look at Seaborn and have a. But you're right. Okay. I wouldn't know, but I'm sure right. I just wanted to show like this is made of example, and some students have made some plots, and that's the best effort at the time, and that's fine. But not something that is only happening becoming professionals. This is a paper from Nature. Massive scatter plot, and on top of each other, and kind of you look at it and look at the Gorgona, Comal, and the white plots over at the edge. You can kind of see might extend under the point cloud. I have no idea. I don't know what they're supposed to show, other than a lot of plots, a lot of points. Surely there is, or maybe that's the story they were trying to tell. A lot of points. Exactly. Which leads me to another one, another kind of funny feature. I'm sure some of you already know that by heart as well, but it's called Simpson's paradox. And basically, you can have, when you look at this really nice diff from, you can see when you look at the group as a total and try to do a correlation between that, there's a negative correlation. But if you divide it up in subgroup, then the correlation is positive. So which means that, like, it's just a reminder to ourselves that you should look at the like the whole data set, and if you then filter enough on it, you get another and you look at the whole one. So you have to have this holistic exploratory work and then dive in and then perhaps dive out again to really understand the full data set. And it's from 1973, and they had some emission data where basically saying that males were more prominent getting in university, but when you looked at the different institutes of the university, females were more prominent getting in. And it's just because when you then have a founding a variable as gender in that case, it kind of it changed the result. So you kind of need to look at the data as a whole and in these sections to get the full. Pretty interesting. Hope you also like. Another thing, and when you see plotting, this is from another paper from the 18th November, so we're fresh from the press, but it happens all the time that you see, okay, it's probably a paper, data science, gap values, then there's this plot. It is so, like, if it's worth showing, it probably be so big that you can see it, because then kind of I had to zoom in. I looked at the plot in higher detail. Luckily, it's vector graphics, so then you zoom in and then you find, like, on the white background, nonetheless, like a off color white XL color written very small in kind of either that's important or it's not. Right now, it's just plotted and you scatterness. I'm not sure I agree that it's telling story right now. I didn't read all those papers. Another thing is kind of how do you tell story, and something I get most people often come into time series. So how do you look at time series? Because they can be noisy. Have some time series data here where you have a lot of variability, quite noisy. Some weekend effects. We don't get data, so it gets highly unstable and jumps out. You can't basically see trends. Just look at the blue line. Then okay, let's something about that. What rolling mean? Move all these things, and now we have something smooth. So now move the original noisy data set and start looking at that. Now we have the different rolling mean lengths. Now we get to the point, because I mean, this was an actual discussion we had, because plots are all great. Now, there's not a wrong one of the different rolling mean lengths. 28. None of them are wrong, but they just tell different stories. Depending on how you want to use that data, that's the discussion we had internally. Which one is the most appropriate one? You have a rolling mean that is not centered at the point, have a lag, and the effect you're looking at will only be detected after certain. But on the other hand, if you have a two-word, it perhaps still has the variability you get rid of, because so there's a lot of things to when you do this kind of resampling, like a windowing function, effective lag. How should you just there's no right or wrong answer here. Whenever you do, kind of sampling time series data, you should really keep in mind what is the so important to have a slow moving curve to see long trends for the business, or it's kind of this is about detecting the onset of a something event. Then you might talking. Thanks. And I think, but which is kind of attacks the same thing, kind of. So we have a lot of monitoring. We have more than 1,000 different checks for cars on the platform every day. That means like we have 10 million rows of different data checks every time, and we want to look at long-term trends. We want short-term trends, all at the same time. We want to capture these. How do you do that? And how do you visualize it? Say that this is some KPI select of specific cars. You can see, but basically on the top we have these graphs, and now I'm showing the last 28 days. And the next one I'm showing the last quarter, 98, and the final one is the whole year. So in the same plot we have the data at different time scales. So I can see the variability days and the 90 days. I don't want to Jansson. Then I have another graph to kind of look at longer term trends, and then we have the yearly trend where you can see kind of things going up and down you would otherwise not see if you only had the last month. Like looking in all the time scales, same plot kind of gives us a way of capturing trends wouldn't otherwise have. And then what I wanted to say is just down all. I think very few was in the beginning, so variable and that then it normalizes and probably do logging firmware. Yeah. So this is also something I think kind of interesting. I was watching James Bond family when young. I always looked at the kind of the evil lair control boards, and there was lighting dots all over the place, and some were yellow, some were red. And I was like, what is the sense of this? That didn't make any colors. But actually now I grow older. I now enjoy it very much more, because what you can do thought like that, or a representation of data this way, is that you are really good at looking at anomalies. It's really easy for us to pick out the red dot in a sea of yellows. So if you train yourself to look at the go by, you glance, everything is yellow, you pass, but by out of the corner of your eye you see one red bulb, and something going on, you investigate it. So it actually serves a purpose, this kind of getting anomalies by just glancing at it. And in our company, we've done the same. We kind of, again, we have all these ways of looking at data, and one of the things we do, we every second week. PDF going through all these 1,000 and looking for patterns in the data. Here, I'm looking at it. Everybody, I know everybody in the audience here, looking at the same two dots I am. That's the intention of the plot, because there is an anomaly. This is 100% of all the cars from 2019 and 21 specific model, this specific era. Then we can kind of take this plot. Okay, that's a cluster. That's something going on. There's not a random distribution error. There's something going on specifically for those. We can go to our campus technicians, guys who know how to speak data layer and the class, and they can say, probably write that in our configurations of the car. I can't even. When you mark it up, it's, but it shouldn't. And we kind of find a solution. The point just, now we have two red dots in yellow. My eyes are drawn to it initially, like very fast. When we go through a PDF like this, 100 pages, science team, campus team, flip through the pages and just boom, there was a pattern, and we go back and into it. So kind of this kind of highlighting patterns by using colors is actually really useful. I kind of enjoy. This is another plot, just to tell kind of plotting the right plot to the right people. So this is from a business analysis, and on the one hand, have this very complex 3D plot showing a lot of details, and this was the right plot for the right. Had a technical discussion. We need kind of why does it look like that? You could spin it around. You could, oh yeah, but if you kind of look into the low of this axis, there's something going on, and we could kind of understand it, expect it. And the complexity of plot was a feature, kind of the story we wanted to tell at the time. Then, like we matured on that part, agreed on how the data should be put. And the next part is, how do we present it to somebody who doesn't have either the interest, bandwidth, or time to go into the complexity? Simplified, getting down to a point that tells that story, tell to those people. That's not about complexity. That was about, okay, you see, follow a line and see that it increases. That was basically the takeaway story. And I mean, and it's just basically aggregating over these things and out, and then comes in. But then kind of just the idea is you takeaway here is you need to know your audience and what story you need to tell to the audience. That not necessarily always I needed the simplest story ever. Has it merit? But to some people, telling the right story is the complexity. Like that can open the discussion of certainty. Okay, some easily digestible visualizations. I don't know how many of you know this. Probably a lot of you know it. Is the visualization, the Gapminder plot. It's just one of these things. It's mesmerizing when you look at it, and it shows on the lower, on the x-axis, you have the life expectancy. Now I'm gonna dare myself on you. We're following Denmark here. The size of the bubble is the population. Then you can see this trend of how data points move up through time, and more are happening. Life expectancy drops. The best visualization, but it tells a story and visually. So kind of want to look at it over and over again and follow the bubbles. Why is the green one growing in population up in? Others have went far to the life expectancy down, but it's just mesmerizing. I want to play with it. Kind of, I haven't touched much about it. Kind of this kind of interactive really also serves a purpose across the audience. And the other one, and if you had ever had my third time I presented Pydata, I love showing this. I have it on my. Unfortunately, it's not my computer. I don't have the login here. But basically, another example of digestible patient. If I said to anybody, "Oh yeah, here I have 300,000 temperature measurement over Denmark," please instantaneously understand what that means. But now visualized in this Kepler GL, which I also advocated for, develop the geospatial visual, pop your data frame in, kind of it spins up this Java-based play around. Now we have almost 300,000 data points, and I binned them in areas of take the median value. Now we can see both from Scotland somewhere stops and another trend going in. So kind of the right visualization can make data sets digestible. So we're nearing the end. So now some of the fun parts to keep is just looking at that. So this one from a Colombian ex-prime minister posted this. You see, okay, there's a bar. One is larger than the other. Homicides, but higher on the other end. But if you look closely to the kind of deliberately misleading points, one is a range of 8 years. Second is a range 2 years. Mind-boggling. Well, something I found yesterday, a colleague showed to me. It was kind of, we need error bars. Obviously, we need error bars on the plots, or we need T's. So they just posted T's on top of it, and it's in a paper you can go download. Absolutely lovely. Then there's another one that's kind of infographics, and obviously this is about the color scale. Is the color scale beautiful earth colors? Surely, I love it. I could make tapestry, but it doesn't make any sense in kind of qualitatively different things you want to highlight. You want to have a qualitative color scale. Otherwise, it's just different colors of orange, and I couldn't, even if I wanted to, make out which one is. See that every now and then, which is also just kind of fun, where the like drawing the pie plot in itself is, but drawing the pie plot is something visually and nothing to do. And then finally, this one is really good as well. Like a 47, same 47, but then it's lower and equal to the 48. No data, but then comes 51, which is lower than the 50. It's like bonkers. Had as much fun as I had when I was finding this. There's a whole page, WTF, where you can find examples of such. Basically, the final slide here is basically my takeaways. And so I hope if you remember 4 things, is kind of use the right color scale. There can be really bad conclusions. I mean, there's stories in the data in oil business of people kind of misinterpreting the color scales, drilling for prospects based on bad interpretations. That will be kind of a cost of millions. Hey, kind of really costly based on. You always have to appropriate color. Kind of help the user audience get to the right conclusion as fast as possible. It's kind of but basically the idea is that can also preemptive misunderstanding and know that some audiences take this and come to the wrong conclusion, write it in, or kind of annotate that this is the how, help the reader understand what basically shown and what the takeaway will have short time span lines over. And this is the discussion point that I think as data professionals we should take on the role of propagating the knowledge and the importance of certainty. Can't just show a bar plot of them. Need to dive a little bit deeper and at least show them so they can see, oh, they're not different by any stretch of them. Okay, but I'm still going to show it. But we should, as data professionals, in my opinion, propagating certainty. Hence, we have to tell that story. And finally, kind of statistics should only follow a more exploratory data analysis. Whenever that comes into doubt, we should up Anacom's order. I think that might be all. Visualization. Basically, was a colleague of mine who recommended currently Nature of short articles on statistics, error bar, visualize log plots, and just going through kind of a repository of a short article. I want to read more. A reference. Any questions? Hmm. Kind of basically have exploratory analysis fairly often. I will be look into something and we play around with it and we get plots and try to have a feel of data, generate whatever we have with pandas appropriate, and kind of have that discussion with stakeholders. Second tier is kind of our dashboarding, internal dashboarding, kind of redefinition. Kind of a definition on what we show, what is the data, what by all these things, and then we kind of make a dashboard, a set of plots that can always be updated for some clear assumptions out. Then the final thing is kind of the customer fronting plots, which are then designed by actual designers. They have strong opinion how to help them with data, but basically they do what they tell the story. Kind of, it's a tiered level, also a maturity. Don't go to the customer. Oh yeah, yeah. I think 100 right to request your data. I think it's yeah. So scrolling, very GDPR compliant. It's kind of writing to support, and then it takes a little while, but then I will. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been pushing for more advanced graph all the time, but I don't think I'm represent normal car driver in what my graphing is. I think actually there's also in home study first engineer. I haven't tried it out. the guy who wrote the JS library. So complex, but it's so beautiful, the things he does. And a big thanks to Philip. Yes. I mean, some of the times where we think them here have made some kind of have internal dashboard complexity, kind of into the concept of having special assumptions, kind of. So we know that we can't put all that text and all that complexity, but it will stand by itself. But it's really important that that kind of accessible by timescale. Kind of, it's all written out. So we kind of often livable kind of add that kind of assumptions. I'm not sure everybody always reads, but at least at some point out we can point to it. This is the code to kind of assist. Yeah, you could say it's kind of a dashboard, some tabs, and where you kind of have assumptions, kind of next, very close to how that could also be have it in mind when you time scale something happened here. Write that in your notes to so you kind of whatever happened, go to the have a kind of package complexity can help the audience understand the plot in the right way. And also, kind of what we often is develop a new visualization, come with some have a session, try to kind of. It would be lovely if one interactive dashboard or a visual, but it's never the case. So you have to sit down with people, takeaways, kind of sessions.